Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Before we go ahead and pass the ball off to Jason Smith, who's going to take us through our presentation, I wanted to cover a bit of groundwork with you. We will be recording today's presentation, so if you have someone you would like to share this presentation with or would like a copy of the recording for review, keep an eye on your inbox in the days following the event for a link to the recording. Also, we will be accepting questions and comments. So if you have a question or comment for our presenter or for myself, feel free to direct them via the questions or chat window. We'll do our best to get to questions as time allows. So without much ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand the ball over to Jason Smith, who's going to take us through today's presentation. Jason?
Thank you, Ray. It's great to be with you today, and this is a brand new webinar for us, Cloud Staging, and why you should be thinking about staging your your desktops now for the next desktop. So we'll take you through some best practices and what you'd want to do to get yourself ready, no matter what your plans are. We'll also give you a look at some of the options in the market for emerging desktops in the cloud, and even if you're not ready, we'll talk about this concept of cloud staging. So one thing's for certain is that change will be forever happening in this desktop environment and market that we find ourselves in. You know, ever since the advent of the PC, it's changed, and change has only sped up if you look back through it in historical terms. And now you have more options than ever, ways to deploy your desktop. Windows may still be the thing that keeps everybody on a level playing field as far as a main corporate or enterprise type desktop to log into to produce things, but there's more ways than ever to deliver Windows desktops. If we want to look at a quick view of the virtual desktop area of Windows desktop computing, you can see it on this graph right here, and you won't find this anywhere else. The staff here at Liquidware, we put this together a few months ago, and it's part of our white paper on Microsoft WVD, and it shows up in some other areas as well. But I'll walk you through this real quick. If you look back at the virtual desktop part of this industry, Citrix introduced WinFrame in '95, and they were around, yes, right before that. But as far as WinFrame goes, the first very viable Windows server-based computing product, 1995, and Microsoft took note of it and also got into the market in a big way by licensing Citrix MultiWin in '97. They also started to rein in the spread of delivering Windows this way in 1998 by introducing Windows NT terminal services. Citrix also, within that same day, introduced MetaFrame on terminal services. So that was the sanctioned or blessed way to do server-based computing at the time, as it was gaining momentum and gaining traction. Microsoft was looking to fold this in a very formal way. Citrix introduced Zen Desktop many years later. It enjoyed success there for 10 years, and there was some other highlights in there, but the next biggest highlight was the advent of VDI, and VMware also in that same year of 2008 introduced VMware View. Amazon introduced a new way, yet again, to deliver a turnkey desktop in the cloud, Amazon Workspace as DAS, and also they have Amazon AppStream. Microsoft then again gets into that type of the market, VDI market, as well as the new way to do server-based computing with turnkey. Had called it Remote Desktop Management Infrastructure when it was codenamed, and they released it as Microsoft WVD, and of course, Windows 10 multi-session, a new OS that would move the role from server-based computing to the desktop role. Nutanix bought Frame in that same year of 2018, and Frame went GA in the following months in 2019, and of course Microsoft WVD went GA also in 2019, and there promises to be even more changes this year. So change indeed is certain. If you think about your organization and the desktops that you delivered across the period of time that you've been involved, whether it was all the way to '95 or several years ago, you would agree, I believe, that change is certain. Even in the Windows operating system area, we just experienced another milestone where Windows 7 deadline passed, and it's now been, as of today, 37 days since security updates for standard support have ended. You have to pay for that, and it's awfully expensive for the even for the first year, the second year, and the third year. It's incredibly more, up to $200 per PC to extend that in the third year, depending on the version of Windows that you're on. So it's important to, if you've got Windows 7 desktops, to think about where you want to take those. And many organizations we know still do have many Windows 7 desktops for a variety of reasons. People thought that this was over when Windows 10 was introduced, and let's look at some of the headlines that came out when Windows 10 was about to be released, and it was going to be called really, or the one OS to rule them all. And if you'll even think back, there was a thing called the Windows Phone, right? And no, it was going to be, in reality, it was the last main naming convention. They said they wouldn't really rename Windows after that. And now there's talk again of renaming Windows to something else we've seen in headlines in recent months. We know that the Windows 10 operating system and user profiles have changed so dramatically since the launch of Windows 10. It has changed actually almost 5 times, or right at 5 times, where the changes in the Windows OS are so dramatic that the user profile will not coexist backwards and forwards with mixed versions of Windows. So those changes are indeed almost as big already as the ones that happened with Windows 7. Now, this has gotten more stable over the last few years, but there's been dramatic changes. So unless you think that I'm really just sounding alarm bells that don't exist, after today's webinar, I want you to take a look at the news if you haven't already seen it, because look at this headline within the last week. And I just had to add this. I added this slide about 15 minutes before today's webinar. We had this thing ready, but I got to thinking, it's broken again. There was an update within the last week and a half or two that has updated, that has broken Windows 10, and Windows is still in fix mode because user profiles are being hidden, and in some cases believed to be deleted. Although some people have been able to roll back the changes and get their user profiles back, the latest version and this profile fix are the latest version of Windows, and it has broken Windows 10 yet again. And that is within the last week. You look at the date here is from the 15th, this story in Forbes, and you can find many, many more out there if you haven't already seen this. So if you've got this update pending, you might want to put that one off. Or if you are already running solutions like we'll talk about today, you can indeed have the ability to roll them back to an earlier point in time. So if something does happen to the user profile and user data, you can roll them back easily, actually within a matter of minutes, if not seconds. A little bit about Liquidware is that we have an adaptive workspace management suite that works across all Windows desktops. So change is certain, but no matter how you deliver Windows now or in the future, Liquidware is your partner to make sure that you transition those desktops one to the next, no matter what it is. As long as it's running Windows, we will support you through those transitions. We support a variety of Windows operating systems today, every version of Windows 10. We support Windows 7 still. We support every server supported version of Windows, Server 2016, 19, for example, and back to 12. And you can count on us to help you through those transitions and give you a 0 user downtime. We support every way that you can deploy Windows, including Amazon Workspaces, AppStream, Citrix Virtual Desktops, Microsoft WVD, Frame from Nutanix, and VMware Horizon, and others such as WorkSpot and others that aren't mentioned here. It is important to note that once a user is under management with Liquidware Suite, we can take you through in those changes immediately with 0 user downtime because we put your data in best practices mode. Leading virtual Windows desktop solutions for the cloud are mentioned here. So I want to take you through those because some of these solutions have helped solve the changes for workspace management in some isolated cases, while others have not. at best, they're siloed. Siloed meaning they only work for that solution. For example, if we look over at Citrix, very mature operating way to deliver the Windows operating system, virtual apps and desktops, runs on any cloud. Is it on-prem and cloud? Yes. It's got the benefits of it. It's got the longest enterprise history in the market and the biggest customer base. It provides a workspace management set of solutions and tools that are siloed to work in there. Citrix UPM, really not meant to come in and out of a Citrix desktop and to take you to something else or to manage things very granularly. Also, Citrix app layering. Okay, once you stay in an exact operating system, or if you stay in the Citrix type of a desktop, but if you start to move it even over to a different operating system in between Zen app and Zen desktop, the older terms I know, virtual apps and desktops, they won't work. And also the monitoring is tied to Citrix that they do. And this is just an example. I call Citrix out because they're the leader still in virtual Windows desktops. And yet their workspace management is siloed. It's meant to work just for Citrix. It's because they're solving things for themselves that are really industry-wide problems. If you look at what Liquidware does, we solve these for every Windows desktop. So you can pick and choose what desktop you want to move to even in a few days or a month from now. And users' adaptive workspace management is not siloed. It will flow over from one to the next to the next. And even if you have a mixed way of delivering Windows. So Amazon, they don't have many workspace management options. They rely on an ecosystem. Liquidware is the only one approved to provide workspace management in there. Microsoft, they have some things included. FSLogix is a great tool. It works across all Windows, but again, it's tied to a Windows operating system. We can run with it. In those cases, we'll get to those a little later. They have an expanding ecosystem like Liquidware to take care of advanced use cases in mixed operating system environments and mixed ways to deliver Windows. Nutanix also relies on Liquidware, and VMware, again, like Citrix, has a robust set of solutions, but they're siloed. They're meant to work in the VMware Horizon ecosystem, not to take you from desktop to desktop. After all, these vendors don't really want to help you get off of their solutions and into something else. Whereas Liquidware, we're Switzerland. Whatever you choose as a customer, we want to help you get there, right? And we're partners with all of these organizations, but we're the best advocate for our customers and for our partners that are implementing these solutions. So those are some great set of solutions. But again, I alluded that we can help you get there. There's really no Bing Maps or Google Maps to help you for desktop transformations, and that's exactly where Liquidware comes in with our adaptive workspace management. And I promise you we'll get to the cloud staging. This is a little bit about the challenge. It's a little bit about the problem. After this, we'll move right into the cloud staging bit and how we can help you do that, and how you might be able to think of even some tools that you might already own to help you stage for the cloud today. Liquidware's adaptive workspace management saves user environment management, policy management in the cloud. It also saves user profiles in the cloud that are compatible with tools like FSLogix, and it can make them readily adapt within seconds at login to work across those. Our application layering solution, also very cloud compatible. You can save it to any of the 3 major clouds, and it will play back no matter where your enterprise is located. As long as you hit an AD infrastructure, we will then apply the changes and bring even applications down to the desktop in a matter of seconds. So if you change from one way of delivering Windows to the next, even across operating system versions, these things follow the user and they're not siloed to your desktop management solution. The monitoring and diagnostic solution that we offer is Stratosphere UX, that stands for user experience. It's a way of putting a small agent on a machine and learning how those machines are being used, applications in use, so you can start to learn how you can migrate over to your transform desktop of choice by taking and making sure the applications that you need are available just in time, and also to assess for desktops of the future. So what is cloud staging? Maybe you've never heard the term, or maybe you've just heard it in recent months. It is an adaptive desktop management strategy that you can invoke and adopt that leverages centralized cloud-based storage as a staging area to transform your desktops in a frictionless way. It enables you to coexist your desktop types and lift and shift them to a brand new desktop, as I spoke about on the previous slides. Once a user is under management in a proper cloud staging best practice, it greatly eases that switch over, even gives you a zero migration, to where you can a user can readily be productive on their desktop as soon as they log into that. And you'll see that today in a quick demo that we have. So let's talk about 3 of the top ways that you can get ready for cloud today. You can stage your applications to where they're compatible and they can be brought down to any desktop of choice. So discover what applications are in use and figure out a way to deliver them universally. If that's through application virtualization, or if that's through application layering that's stored in the cloud, those are 2 great ways, and we'll touch on those in a moment. Make sure that your user environment management is staged in the cloud and ready to go, and that it's compatible across operating system versions and not locked to an operating system version, because you're probably going to be changing those as well, if not from Windows 7 to 10, in between versions of 10, and you will have your user environment ready to be played back to the desktop within seconds at login, including your policy management. So there's no time lost there. Again, users can be instantly productive. And then lastly, but really almost most importantly, is the user authored data staging. You want to harvest anything that the user has saved on those machines, docs, Excel spreadsheets, anything they've saved, and make sure you don't leave that data behind, and harvest that and host it in cloud storage as well. And there's ways to do that out there. You can invoke things like on your own. You can invoke some folder redirection that goes to some places that cloud document storage things pick up, like Dropbox and others, or you can automate that process as well. So application staging. Questions you want to ask yourself is, how can you get a complete inventory of applications that are actually being used? Because these desktops you're delivering might have been around for a while. How do you know what applications are going to be compatible with the new operating system version? And is now a better time to really take a step back and think about how should you handle application delivery in the future? Is there a better way? Applications that they might not be compatible after all with the Windows 7 to 10, so you'll need to know that up front. And they might not be compatible with being delivered with VDI or server-based computing, because they might have services or drivers that aren't compatible. And now is that time to rethink that. Should you be using Microsoft AppV or ThinApp? Should you take a look at MSIX App Attach that's emerging from Microsoft? Or should you look at application layering that can be very broad for all types of applications that can deliver them from the cloud? So here's a little bit of an answer from Liquidware and how we would do it. We would take our Stratosphere solution and we would take an inventory of applications being used. And this is an application strategy report. We're compatible with Microsoft BI, a reporting tool that's part of Microsoft Office, even, to be able to view these in a very graphical way. And here you see a report of applications that have, this is run for a group of users, applications that are in use. Your total application count during the time that these were assessed were 61. 37 of these applications could be delivered through FlexApp. Now we can take a separate look at this and see if maybe you're interested in ThinApp, or maybe you're interested in emerging things like MSIX App Attach. So we can look at those as well. Are they good candidates to even think about re-architecting the way you're delivering those? Can you deliver them from cloud storage or from on-prem storage that can be temporarily put in cloud, then brought back to on-prem storage? What applications might be best off in the base image too? So we took a look at these 39 users, and these are the applications that were in use in this one report. And Stratosphere has hundreds of reports. This is a very interesting one that can help you assess for your new desktops and give you a starting place. Again, there's no Google or Bing Maps, but Liquidware can help show you how to get there for your unique environment. If you look over here, you'll see what set of users were actually using which applications. So if you look at the Office characteristics, for example, they're going to rate fairly high, in the 30% range or higher. Cisco, again, up here, rating fairly high. Those are things you might want to think about putting in your base image. But when you look at something as small as FileZilla, you probably want to deliver that from application virtualization or application layering, because there was only a handful, actually one person that used it in the organization. So this gives you a picture and helps you design the best base image for your new environment, whether it's physical, virtual, or cloud-hosted desktops, and also gives you a starting point for how you want to rethink delivering applications. Liquidware FlexApp can help you deliver those applications through application layering. We hesitate sometimes even calling FlexApp layering because there's some application delivery solutions out there that have given layering a bad name. Let me tell you the differences and why we hesitate. We like to call it sometimes application attachment from a virtual hard disk because it works very seamlessly into the operating system environment. FlexApp supports application staging because we can save packages once they're packaged to any of the 3 major clouds in the industry. They allow you to package application one time, and in almost all instances, that application will work for any operating system environment in any delivery platform. You see, it's a big difference than some application layering solutions on the market that might work for only one way of delivering Windows and one operating system. Then you have to repackage and repackage again and repackage again. Not only that, we have fast packaging, so we can package fast to begin with. We package applications in about the time it takes to install them. Application management, it really streamlines this by reducing the number of desktop images you get. You saw that previous slide, we talked about applications that may go in the image, and then you can have a more generic based image for users and then layer applications down or attach them to endpoint devices on a per group basis. The HR department gets their apps, the accounting department gets their apps, and so on. FlexApp has a very high degree compatibility for the types of applications it can layer, better than 90%. So complex applications that have drivers and services can be layered into an environment. So it goes without saying, you can use other application delivery methods, including ThinApp, MSIX app attach. But if you're looking at FlexApp, sometimes this will supersede the need to use those types of things because it is more compatible. It's quite frankly, in some cases, more mature, been on the market longer, has more users under its belt. It's tried and true. It also supports application strategy assessments, such as those from Citrix App DNA. And Flexera has a similar solution out there that helps you know what applications can work for Windows 7 to 10, for example, which ones are compatible going forward. Cloud staging is made easy, as I said earlier, because you can host these packages, if not temporarily, full-time, if you want to, in any cloud of choice, the 3 being Microsoft Azure, Google, or Amazon, and they'll come down during user login or be activated during the user session. Its support of object-based storage is unparalleled in the industry. No one else is doing this for application attachments. In this case, you see that we're taking a look inside where we're hosting things inside the Azure console, and we're hosting these on Azure Blob Storage. Chrome packages are hosted there, for example. This is a look inside the desktop. Chrome here is being mounted from a VHD that's hosted on Azure. All right, the top 3 challenges for user environment staging, and I could show you the same thing by example for Amazon or Google, where they were hosted. Going back to the top 3 challenges, user environment management staging. I'm going to take a quick breather here and ask you, if you want to ask questions, just submit them there to the window, the chat window, and we'll get to them through the course of today's webinar. Ray Swanson's monitoring those and can help us out by letting us know when the questions come in and what questions may be coming into the end. Ray, have we had any come in as of now?
We have, Jason. Do you want me to ask a few of them?
Sure. Now would be a good time just to take a little bit of a break, and we'll take a look at what these questions are.
So someone asked, under app layering, you note integration with UEM. Does that mean that you also support app delivery to mobile devices such as iOS and Android?
We support, we primarily, for our application layering, we only support Windows. So if it's a Windows operating system, yes, we support it. Does it support iOS and Android applications? No, it does not. Now, can you get your applications there? Yes, but you have to have a Windows session running on those devices. For example, an Apple iPad in a hospital environment, we'd have a Citrix session going, and that's where you would see us, the closest fit that we have to mobile devices. UEM, by our standards, means user environment management, not a term that came after user environment management, which was unified endpoint management, and that may be where the confusion comes with UEM. It's UEM to us means user environment management.
Here's another one that deals with application layering, and someone asked, so an organization has research to do for each application.
So an organization has a little bit of research to do for each application, meaning you need to see if it's compatible. Well, with our FlexApp solution, while that's true, Stratosphere can help you identify candidates. There's a high compatibility rating for FlexApp that it will work. So those with drivers and services are great candidates. Those that go to the kernel OS and things like virus detection, things like that, they would be left best of the base image. So you don't have to do an assessment before you start packaging and layering, but you're encouraged to do so just so you have an overall understanding of what applications are being used in your environment. The Office, the example of Office is a great one, right? Because although we can package Microsoft Office, it's very complex to do so. We've got a longer list of things that you'll need to do, and because of the licensing especially, that you'll need to do to package it and then to attach it from FlexApp. Now, do 100% of your users need Office? Probably. So where should you put that? In your base image. It's going to be easiest to keep it updated. There's no, it's not encumbered by anything else. Let's talk about an accounting package though. Only the HR department, the accounting department may need that. So that would be a great one for FlexApp. So you can think about the way that we managed Citrix for years, and now WVD is a similar way. You're going to have base images, and you're going to have, in some cases, multiple servers that you're running. You can lay down one base image that works for a lot of the users with the base images, with the base applications that they need, such as Office, or in your PDF viewer of choice. That's another great one that you might want to just stick in the base image. And then your departmental applications can come in on top of that. It makes base image management very much easier to do. Any further questions?
That's all right now.
Okay, great. Let's move on to user environment management staging. The challenges that you have out of that is to, how can you capture user profiles? And when I talk about capture user profiles, people cringe, right? Because a lot of times they can become bloated. How can you capture a smart user profile might be a better way to think about that. Only the information that's needed. How can you protect user authored data, make sure it's kept accurate and secure? Can policies actually follow the user and not the platform? For example, a lot of these things are kept in group policy preferences, but if you want to keep them on a context-aware form between operating system versions and delivery methods, can you do that? How can you keep users productive during a big migration? Oh, okay, the answer to that sometimes is, okay, we're going to work on the weekend and flip the switch on Monday morning or Sunday night. But what if you could do this during the week and keep a user always productive and never down? Never have to run user state migration tool to take a machine down, to massage it, to make sure everything's off of that. What if you could do all that in the background? Now, is there a better way to handle user profiles going forward now that there's things around like FS logics and granular ways to append to the profiles, make sure that they're compatible between operating system versions? And how do you handle large profiles? Because this has become a big thing in the last 5 to 10 years, and that is things like Microsoft Office 365 keep large caches, and that's not really compatible with VDI solutions or cloud-based desktop solutions. Things that we should admit is that current user profiles and data are not dynamic in their traditional form from the Windows operating system that you would just run on a one-off desktop basis. Windows changes break profiles, as we saw in the headline even that I showed you from this past week. Profile loss can cause a lack of productivity, and it might cause business critical operations actually to be interrupted if you're deleting data from shell folders because you didn't invoke best practices. I touched on user state migration tool from Microsoft a bit ago, but that works for some organizations. But again, you're experiencing downtime, or you're going to work weekends just to get you machines up and running and make sure things are off. Copy and paste methods are largely inefficient. And by the way, that's one of the fixes for this latest thing for Windows 10 is copy and paste it from a hidden profile and get it back up and running. That's one of the fixes. It's not obviously not efficient to do that for everybody in your enterprise. Just simply saying I don't want to take the user profile and data is not the way to go. Greenfield, rip and replace, you're going to leave data behind, and the user is going to be less productive because they're going to have to recreate tedious things like signatures and other things. Policies sometimes get tied to the Citrix and VMware environment. Norscale over there on the Citrix side, it's a great tool, but it's meant to work only with, which is their UEM, environment management. It's a great tool, but it's only really intended to work for Citrix environments, for example. So they get tied to it. The old Immediate solution that VMware has acquired, yeah, it works for a lot of companies, but it gets tied to the VMware environment. It's siloed. So ProfileUnity takes away all those drawbacks, and it makes profiles work backwards and forward. They adapt every single time that the user logs on. Is this Windows 7? Is it Windows 10? Is this Windows 10X? Is it server? Is it Windows 10 multi-session? They just simply work. Smart profiles are harvested. We leave caches behind and things that cause profile bloat. It ends migrations when you put in ProfileUnity, because you can flip a switch and you can have things in place like best data practices and the user profile that comes down from the cloud or from your data center. And once these users are under management, you can switch. You can switch over to Amazon, to Citrix, to VMware desktops, to WVD. It doesn't matter, and you can have a zero downtime migration. Policy management follows the user, and it puts the platform untethered. It's very compatible with FSLogix, which really makes a local profile from Windows hosted in a container, but has some drawbacks because it's locked to a Windows OS version, but ProfileUnity overcomes those. So we run very efficiently, and you'll see that in today's demo with FSLogix. Profile rollbacks are easy. Organizations that may have had problems in the last week with these Windows 10 breaks from the updates can simply roll back their user profiles and get back all their user profiles information, because we can back up to over 100 copies of a single user's profile. It's set. You can go 1 to 100. Cloud staging is made easy because instead of redirecting the profile or storing it to the local path or even to a data center, which we can do, we can store them directly to object-based storage. You don't even have to manage file servers. For Azure Blobs, for example, and Google and Amazon S3, all supported directly within our UI with no scripting to do. Here's some examples of the way that we support object-based storage. In our quick start wizard, you'll see that it's actually just in here. There's no scripting to get. Some solutions will tell you can do this, and they say get very versed with this scripting or that scripting. No, ProfileUnity is a very mature solution. You'll find solutions in here built in. So as you see, AppStream built in here and other options as well. In this case, we've chosen for AppStream to utilize AWS AppStream server to utilize the S3 storage, and then you put in your credentials there, directly in there, and it will open up and start saving to the cloud. So once these are saved to the cloud, again, you have a data point to be able to bring them down to any other desktop, as long as ProfileUnity runs across those desktops. Here's our rule sets in our ProfileUnity portability. So we break the profile up into maybe 25 rule sets to where they're backed up and restored. It's a delta differential. You'll see that they're actually being stored, in this case, to Azure, and only the ones that are changed are updated. That's how we get a very fast login. So only the ones that are changed. If you're running this with FSLogix, we'll look at the profile, for example. It's persistent by FSLogix. Anything that changed in there between the last session, or even if you were on a different machine with a different FSLogix profile, we will update the delta differentials of the portion of the profile that's changed. So very efficient in that way, works across OS versions, and helps FSLogix overcome some of the things that some of the things it does not do. In this case, it's the same exact screen but we've saved the credentials, we've saved the information to Amazon S3. Look at the path. And then again, once we're into the UI, we're supporting object-based storage here, and this is a look from within Azure and where we're directly saving this on block blob storage. So we can accomplish the user-authored data staging as well. So this is the third thing, the third challenge we talked about today. What about things in shell folders, my documents and things like that? You don't want to leave them behind, and maybe you've never redirected those. More often than not, we actually run into that. You wouldn't believe it. Best practices from Microsoft says redirect those to a local file share, CIFS drive or something like that. Many organizations haven't done that. We can help you put in those best practices. We can help you put in those best practices and steer them to Google Drive or to OneDrive or to the area that Dropbox would pick them up. So we can sync them to that location, and then those services would pick them up. And that's how we stage user authored data. So we're redirecting shell folders, likely places users save data, and then we are making them available to those services to sync. So here's the way that works. Prior to user authored data redirection, you can say what to do with that data, and we'll redirect it. We can do excludes, MP3s, MP4 files, large files that the user may not need. We can exclude a lot of things, and then we can sync those up to those cloud areas for documents. In this case, here's our UI and where this would happen. What we're going to do is we're going to invoke a redirection of all users that run ProfileUnity. We're going to redirect the shell folder My Documents from wherever it is today. If that's local, that's where we'll pick it up. If it's on a CIFS drive, that's where we'll pick it up. And we're going to sync it to a new location. What's the new location? It's going to be, in this case, an area that Amazon WorkDocs or Google Drive or something like that, or OneDrive can pick up, and we can do the excludes here, and we can throttle that too. So what you want to do is you want to run ProfileUnity in your existing legacy environment. Let this happen in the background. Users are uninterrupted. No user state migration tool to run. You can even have an inventory kick in and say when this occurs for each individual user and each individual machine, so it reports back. And keep in mind, separately, the user profile is harvested at first log off, also saved to the cloud, not to document services like Drive and others, but to blob storage, for example, S3 storage, for example, Google Drive, Google storage, for example, and these things get played back at the very next login. So here's the architecture, and to recap what I was just saying. Any type of Windows desktop, physical cloud, VDI, etc. Once we log in and we're running in the environment, ProfileUnity and the agent will be pulled down to the endpoint if it's not built in the base image. We'll run, and we have a set of instructions on what to do. Where should we save that data? At first log off. The user profile can be saved to a local CIFS drive and or to any cloud service of choice that you see here. So that's where we're doing our cloud staging of our profile. So then when we pull it back down, it is immediately picked up at the local profile level. And also if you're running FSLogix from Microsoft, it's picked up there too to populate and hydrate that immediately. And the user's off and running because you've also run us in the legacy environment and harvested off the user's documents, and they're now ready for them to pull down. So that's how we've staged the user profile, and that's how we've also staged documents. Now for FlexApp, applications that you have containerized to be attached are also saved up here to blob storage, and they can be pulled down. So you could have been running those in the previous environment. Maybe you're in a Citrix environment today and you're moving to pure native Microsoft WVD. You wouldn't have to repackage those apps. They'd come back down if you'd saved them in Azure, for example, right back down into your WVD environment and be ready to go. Let's show you how this works in the demo today. We've got two desktops here. One desktop that is a session-based desktop, session-based computing, for example, that's never been, the user's really never been logged on to before. And you'll see FSLogix is running in this environment, but if you hadn't planned accordingly, you've just made a desktop live for users. They just had a from scratch profile created, and this environment does not have the user's profile in it. They're not going to be very productive. It does have Office in the base images you see here. So there is an application, a group set of applications, but their department applications aren't in here. Their profile's not in here. Their Outlook signature and all those things contained in their user authored data is also not made available. So the user's frustrated and they're having a bad day. But what if you'd planned accordingly and you had used something like ProfileUnity that had saved things and synced them up to Azure Blob, for example, and even applications that were brought in from FlexApp, and they're saved to the cloud of choice, and that they could be brought in to that same exact environment. So we're going to activate a configuration to bring applications down to the endpoint. We're going to activate a configuration that had ProfileUnity had harvested the user's previous profiles from their desktop previously, and they'll be injected into it. So this is how you configure ProfileUnity. In this case, FlexApps are applied on at a login basis, and we've checked off one to be a click to layer. In other words, it won't come in until you've clicked on that application, and we're going to activate those. The other thing that we're going to do in this environment is that we're going to make sure that the user has, as I said, a robust set of profiles that they can, a robust profile that has been carried over from their legacy environment. In other words, we're going to make sure that it was activated accordingly. And because we're going to bring some of these applications in at boot time, they're going to activate very fast. We're going to restart these machines in our Azure console where they'll be activated and ready to go. In other words, the scenario B that we're looking at when the user logs on, you have done cloud staging. Applications are ready to come in. This is the same exact desktop, In this case, when you log in here, you'll see FSLogix runs and brings down that generic profile, but then ProfileUnity kicks in. And when ProfileUnity kicks in, it's going to inject and hydrate the FSLogix profile from their earlier operating system version. It's doing that right here. It's also going to activate our configuration for FlexApp applications and containers. And now the same exact desktop, the user is going to be instantly productive because they have applications that are already on their desktop. They need to do their job. This user can open a Camtasia video and start editing right away because that was brought in by FlexApp. This user can also open up any of the other applications that you see. They're readily attached. In this case, Microsoft Edge Chromium is a click to layer application. It's not actually attached yet because maybe they don't need it. Maybe we didn't want to take a hit at login of a second or two. And if we ever click on it, though, we will layer it. We'll come back to that one in a minute. Here, let's look at Outlook. Let's open up Outlook. And while that's opening, we'll also show Notepad. I don't think we've opened Outlook yet. We'll show a Notepad, and the performance is very quick. If we open up that click to layer application, as you see here, look down in the right bottom corner, and you'll see that FlexApp just mounted that one just in time. It wasn't layered until we clicked on it. It was a click to layer application. The rest of them were mounted at boot time. Chromium has even come up that quick because we launched it, mounted it, and then launched it. And now Edge Chromium browser is in this environment as well. Now I talked about FlexApp being compatible with very complex applications. Cisco WebEx is one of those. You can't just virtualize Cisco WebEx. It has drivers and services. It needs to be seen in Outlook, for example, because it puts things in the shortcut toolbar. Start a meeting here, create a meeting there. Let's open up Outlook, which you'll remember is in the base image. Look up here at the toolbar. You'll see this Meet Now icon in the toolbar. It readily recognized that WebEx is in this environment because it looks and feels native to the OS environment. It's actually coming down from a VHD. WebEx is not really installed here. It's coming down from a VHD. We can actually create a meeting here. We can do all the things and interact like WebEx as if it were natively installed. But remember, it's not. It's not in the base image. It's attached from a VHD, and there's a filter driver that makes Windows think that it's natively installed. It makes Windows think that all the files exist inside itself, and they don't. So that's the magic of FlexApp, and that's the benefits. You can cloud stage them, and you can also bring them down and keep your base image management very, very simplified to where you can just layer applications, or as I said today, attach them. That concludes the demo portion today. Ray, I'd like to entertain any other questions. I'd also like to encourage anyone that's seen anything they like to give us a shout out on social media like Twitter. Our handle is Liquidware. Same thing on LinkedIn and other services. You can find us there. Give us a follow. We'll follow you back. Ray, any questions that came in that you see?
Sure. Here's one. Can ProfileUnity be utilized to reduce the number of groups? Will the tool help to see if profiles match characteristics?
Could you reread that one?
Sure. So the first part is, can ProfileUnity be utilized to reduce the number of groups? And the second part is, will the tool help to see if profiles match characteristics?
Yes. So instead of using group policy preferences, most people would just switch over. You can run at the same time, but most people would switch over these processes to ProfileUnity. Our context-aware settings are not only based on Active Directory groups and users, for example. You can browse to those and select those. But you can also do and/or rule sets, and you can do a lot of things you can't do in group policy preferences, and most people do find them much more efficient than the group settings that you have options in group policy preferences. And then we have a whole variety of things that you wouldn't see otherwise of context-aware settings to go down to things like time of day. So between the hours of this and this, make these applications available on the desktop, for example, or change the restrictions on the desktop, or change policy management in some way. We can also do filter and trigger points. So if a doctor's moving about in a hospital, we can set printers to activate depending on the floor they've logged in, because we see that they've reconnected a Citrix session or a VMware session, and we've rerun their printer rule sets. So I know your question was about groups, but yes. And now, as far as can ProfileUnity manage things differently in compared to what is it sees on an endpoint, we can look at environmental variables, and we can act on those. So that's the way that we would do that. Now ProfileUnity takes over and does manage the entire profile. So you can do a merge, exclude, or replace, or any part of the profile, or you can do the same thing for registry keys, by the way. But you can select, and this is where it's a beautiful complement to local roaming profiles, or even a profile tool like FSLogix, is you can get very granular and say, I only want to pick up this part of the profile and make it portable, or I want to add to it, and I want to add to it in a powerful way. I want to do it all the way down to system root or system drive, and these are the things that ProfileUnity opens you up and gives you the ability to do.
All right, here's another question. Will the icons to the files moved by ProfileUnity look different?
The icons to the files moved by ProfileUnity look different. Now, depending on your desktop that you log on to, and I think they're asking about in between operating system versions. If not, they can clarify. They're going to show up a little bit different between operating system versions, but if there's shortcuts on the desktop, we can pick those up in most cases and we'll make those appear across OS. And if you're speaking about FlexApp, the icon for the application will show up where it was packaged. So if you packaged it and you chose also give me a shortcut on the desktop and in the start menu, it'll show up exactly where you packaged it when it's played back.
All right, here's another question. Does it make sense to replicate user profile data, keeping primary to primary DC location, whether on-prem or cloud, and the replicated copy in the DR data center, again, whether on-prem or cloud?
There's different ways to do this. We'd like to understand your needs a little better, and one of our system engineers that has more field experience than me can make the best recommendations on that. But I can tell you that the three clouds out there, you'll need to do your own homework, because again, we're Switzerland and we're not in the practice of recommending one over the other. But some of them are better at replicating data to make sure it's available almost immediately or overnight or around the world in many data centers. Others do an east-west thing or a regional thing, and you'll need to think about where you replicate it. But if you're using our cloud-based storage, you can replicate things in such a way that will help you scale if you choose the ones that replicate data to their multiple cloud data centers overnight. And if you're talking about running on-prem, because we support file shares, you don't have to do any cloud. And I showed you a lot of cloud stuff today, but you can run all this on file shares. We recommend that where you're storing the data, that yes, you do keep in best practices, and that at a minimum you're doing DFS replication for where you're saving your data. And better than minimum, you can use something like our partner PeerSync, PeerSync, I believe is the way it's spelled. They can do a DFS plus, the name of their product. They can help you overcome any shortcomings you think might be in DFS. So you'll want to make sure that those are available if you're doing file shares. Hope that answered your question. If not, we'd love to engage with you further with the system engineering area.
All right, here's another question. Is it possible to have the same desktop icon positions from Windows 7 to Windows 10?
Our experience is that almost always changes. The icons will be on the desktop, but that almost always changes, just the operating system and the way that it handles them by default. For example, one may do, I'm not sure if this is the case, but one may look at it alphabetically, and one may be still relying on the last way it was arranged by the user. So typically what you'll see is that they're reordered. My experience is that if I had them in Windows 7 and just drag and drop them wherever the user had them, when I come into Windows 10, they're going to be reordered. Once you set them in Windows 10, they should stay in the same place.
Someone asked, can you save profile disks to the cloud?
Our profile disk to the cloud, yes, can be done, and they can be saved to object-based storage as well. Again, I'd like to talk to you more about your unique use cases and where you might be looking to do that, so we can tell you and give you advice on best performance.
Someone asked about bandwidth requirements.
Yeah, so we see the very best performance still on CIFS and file shares, but we see good performance on the three major clouds. I liken this to the telephone industry, and when VoIP came about, VoIP, voice over IP phone calls were, I think most people would argue, still problem prone, but the benefits far outweigh the old landline systems. In almost all cases, gave you more flexibility. And this is the way that I see cloud storage, is that the benefits of their replication, their central data storage, you can use it for a short period of time or a long period of time. The benefits over CIFS drives sometimes will outweigh which way you want to go there. You can take data and you can switch it from the cloud back to local CIFS drives if your performance is better. So without getting into the specifics about the bandwidth requirements, of course we want you to have high-speed internet, no matter how you use this. But depending on the benefits that you want to see, compared to your login times and things like that, we want to help you make those recommendations based on your needs. As I said, oftentimes CIFS drives are still the fastest way to go, because if you think about it, we can't squeeze more data over pipe than can actually go. So back to the data center locally is going to be the fastest way to get data from point A to point B. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about, we're not talking about the entire profile, as I said, right? We're talking about delta differentials when you're running it with a technology like either our own profile disk or with FSLogix. We're talking about delta differentials. So first logins may be long, while second logins could be dramatically faster. And when I say long, I don't mean minutes and minutes. I mean noticeably longer, but yet the second login would be noticeably faster because of delta differentials that we're playing back.
All right. Someone also asked about how does it work with OS and app updates?
Great question. And I believe what they may be going after is that There's other layering solutions on the market. If not, we'll talk about profiles too. Profiles will work seamlessly across any OS, backwards and forwards. You'll see some nuances in there because there's some things in Windows 10 that weren't in 7, for example. But they'll work seamlessly across where the user will have what they need. Applications works very well. There's the other application layering solution out in the market. They're very much tied to an OS, so you do have to repackage it, and that's where I was going after. Package once mentality with FlexApp. Once you package it, if the application supports Windows 10, for example, and it was built for 7 but supports 10 and supports the operating system versions, it's going to work with FlexApp 99.9% of the time. You want to test it, but you don't have to repackage it almost ever in our case. And packaging can be quite arduous with our competitor. So not competitor, but with the solution on the market that demands you repackage. Oftentimes those solutions are tied to the OS. You change the OS or you patch them, you may break every application you've ever packaged. That is not the case with FlexApp.
Okay. Someone asked, are there any restrictions on the type of cloud, for example, commercial versus government?
No, those restrictions would just be for your organization, for example. Can you run this here, or can you run it there, and do we support GovCloud, I think might be the question, and in some cases we do. And we'll help you through that, but is it approved to keep that data there by your 3-letter agency if you're a federal agency or something like that? And in that case, you'll want to double check your own policies and get with our federal team if that's what the question is really about.
Here's another related question. They ask, would the cloud stored profile solution work with on-prem desktops and also cloud-based, meaning users can seamlessly go between the two?
Yes, seamlessly. So we can host the compressed version of your profile and ProfileUnity in those rule sets. I just estimated 25 rule sets in the cloud, and you log on to one environment and the profile comes down, and you log off, you log back onto the second environment, and you'll get delta differentials that will make sure that profile, even cross OS version, is in sync and works. And that's where we talk about a 0 downtime migration, for example. You switch over to a second one, even if a generic standard profile was laid down by Windows, as you saw in the demo today by FS Logics, we're going to append to it, and we're going to make sure the user's most recent version of their profile is fully updated.
Okay. Here's a comment followed by a question. I'm going to kind of paraphrase this one because it's a little bit on the longer side. But they talk about how they think FlexApp is a great product. But they wonder if on different clouds, different platforms, how we talk about kind of we're Switzerland and kind of work with all of them, does the experience vary, and are the capabilities equal across all the different vendors?
What we see is that by and large, the capabilities are going to be similar. There are some differences, as I outlined earlier, in the way that the 3 major clouds replicate data. Do they do an east-west, for example, or do they do every data center that they have within 24, 48 hours or whatever? Those are going to be the things that are going to be different for you. And if you are a worldwide conglomerate, for example, and you need this data around the world, some of those cloud services make it easier than others. But the capabilities, by and large, are going to be very similar. And if you are in, for example, thing that might overcome that, I will say Azure can be regional, but if you have your WVD desktops, for example, in one region, it's highly likely you're already going to be replicating that and making sure that WVD region is available here and in Europe, for example, and in Japan or whatever. That's also where your profiles are going to be stored in your same Azure environment. So that will overcome that as well, because you're going to be syncing data at the same time or replicating it in those same areas.
All right, I think we've hit the top of the hour, and I'm not seeing any more questions come in. So Jason, thank you very much for today's presentation. I know I learned quite a bit here, and I appreciate your last minute add-ons to help frame it for us as well. I did see a question just pop in asking if we can get the deck for this. Yes, keep an eye on your inbox. We will be sending out links to the PowerPoint as well as a recording to today's session with some other information. If you want more resources, feel free to visit our website. A great place to ask more questions and continue the discussion is on our community forum, which is community.liquidware.com. If you haven't checked that out yet, that's a great resource for you to connect with other users and experts from Liquidware. Also, check out our customer success stories on our website for some more information, some real world use cases that we have out there. So with that, thank you again, Jason Smith, and thank you all for attending today's presentation. We hope you found it informative. And if you have any other further questions, feel free to reach out and contact us at sales@liquidware.com. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.